So through you, Mr. Mayor, the live stream has started and the recording has begun. So you are ready to begin the meeting?
Okay, so first we will call to order.
Call to order.
Okay, I see we have, put my mic on. See, we have quorum, so I will call to order this regular council meeting on Monday, August 10th, 2020 at 5:40 p.m. So first, we have approval of agenda. And after, regarding the agenda, is there any discussion on the agenda?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that the agenda for the August 10th regular meeting of council be adopted. So you have called to see if there are any amendments to the agenda?
Yep. Any amendments to the agenda as noted? Not seeing any.
So I will call for the vote on the agenda as presented. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Carried unanimously, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry?
Carried unanimously.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Before we carry on with the agenda, there is just an opening remarks I'd like to make to council and to our viewing public and to the SLT. Since our last meeting, our local paper, The Voice of Pelham, we received 6 awards from the Ontario Community Newspaper Association. One of the stories The Voice won was on a drainage lawsuit between the town and some Fenwick residents, which dragged on for way too long. The Voice's story before last election no doubt informed residents that a new approach on this issue was needed, and I'm proud that one of this council's first actions was to settle that issue and end the long nightmare for those residents involved. As elected officials, we always are wary of the press because they make sure that what we do is publicized, and sometimes this doesn't feel good. I know I still have bruises from the kicking over the library board meeting. But lest we get lost in our own little bubble of friends and advisors, the media makes sure that we hear about things that get overlooked. Seeing as all of us on council are gray heads getting grayer, we're all old enough to remember when the Pelham Herald caved in. How blessed we are that, in its place, 50 residents put together enough money to start up a new community paper, still owned by the community today. Many a time have new residents to the town, or even people who were born here but who spent most of their lives away, told me how happy they are to have a free community paper that is actually a real paper, and not just advertisements. The Voice's recognition by its peers proves this. I am sure all of council joins me in offering sincere congratulations to The Voice for these achievements. Well done to The Voice. Thank you. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Did I do that yet, Madame?
Not yet. Through you,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Do any councillors have any to declare? And do I see Councillor Stewart's hand up? Councillor Stewart?
Yes, you did. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I again need to declare an interest. As I am, this is item number 10.2.1, the mandatory face coverings. I am stitching homemade masks, many of which I am donating, but I am also selling some to defray the cost of the materials. So it would be inappropriate for me to participate in the vote on that matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart. Any other pecuniary interest? Not seeing any, I will turn to the clerk.
Thank you. The pecuniary interest is noted in the minutes. The next item on your agenda is the COVID-19 update, Community Emergency Management Coordinator, Fire Chief Limburner.
And that's Fire Chief. Yeah.
Chief Limburner, yes.
Yep, Fire Chief, you're on.
To Mr. Mayor, Council, Senior Management, and all residents who are participating in this meeting. So just a quick update. Currently in Pelham, we've experienced a total of 40 cases. We currently have 2 active cases in the municipality. Four of our neighboring municipalities have 0 active cases. Through the region, over the last couple days, we had 4 new cases on Saturday, 6 on Sunday, and 5 today. Gives us a total of 901 cases total, 47 active, 790 resolved, which is close to 90% of all cases. Across the province, we're doing very well. Also, 40,000, just over 40,000 cases, which 36,279 are resolved. And across the country, 119,000 cases and 104 resolved. Case doubling time is 142 days. Our reproduction rate has gone down since last week to 0.9, which is good. As far as outbreaks go, we currently have 5 outbreaks in the community with 32 outbreaks resolved. And the shift on a case because of the younger crowd, 53.8% are female and 46.2% are male. We only have, out of the 47 active cases in the region, only one of those cases is hospitalized, and it's not an ICU, it's a general admission, and the remainder of those active cases are at home. Out of our distribution of cases, 41% are in our institutions, healthcare facilities, long-term facilities, and retirement homes. 59% are associated with public. Our largest group continuing to gain momentum is the 20 to 39-year-olds. On a good note, our seniors are our highest target group, or the most vulnerable, is that age group is currently 3rd in the number of cases. So they are going down and our young people are going up. We just completed our 2nd staff survey, reaching out to all our staff, asking them their comments on our recovery program and the measures we're putting in place to health and safety measures and to protect our employees. And our next step with that would be to go reaching out further to the employees to ask their input on how to address any of the concerns they do from that survey. There was a few things that came out of it that were a bit negative, but there was a lot of good positive things that derived from it. So, and the last thing I'm going to mention is with the masks, the mandatory face coverings, the regional bylaw is in place now. The main focus right now is with bylaw and employees to educate the public on wearing face coverings, where you have to wear them, where you should wear them, or where you don't need to wear them. I was confronted by a resident today. I was outside and a resident approached me and asked me why I didn't have a mask on. So I think it's just a matter of us focusing on the education portion and getting the message out there that to make sure everybody is comfortable where they have to wear a mask and where they don't have to wear a mask. So moving forward, I think that we will have a positive outcome with that. So that's the end of my report, Mayor, if you have any questions.
Yep. Well, thank you for that, Fire Chief. Any questions from council? Not seeing any. The only comment I would like to make is that although, like you say, the largest group now is at 29 to 39, or the younger group, it is interesting to note that our hospital stays are still non-existent, basically nothing in ICU and just the one in general admission. So even, so maybe that group that is leading the pack, they obviously I think it's been proven that they don't get the severe effects generally that the elderlies do. So let's hope that the hospital beds continue to stay open. The stage 3, it's only been, I believe, a week and maybe 10 days now. So it'll be the next 10 days that maybe we might possibly see an uptick. What's your take on that, Fire Chief?
Well, looking at the numbers, we did go through a few days there where we had 0 and 1s and 2s. The last 3 days, we have 4, 5, and 6 cases, which is not overly alarming considering the amount of people that are coming into the region. But with the long weekend just passing, 5 to 6, 7 days from now, we'll see. The numbers in the last week or so, I believe I talked about this last week, the numbers that we had a little spike a week and a half ago, it was mostly focused around farms and with the residents of those farms, just because of their nature of their social activities. But the videos that you're seeing or the social media you're seeing about Niagara Falls and Niagara Lake, like you would think there was nothing going on in this world other than tourism. Yeah. So far so good, but I think that from the long weekend and the numbers of people that have been coming to the region, the next 5 or 6 days are going to tell us.
Yep, great. Thank you for that. Then, Fire Chief Limburner. And any questions? I didn't see any, so we will turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council received the COVID-19 update presentation from the Limburner Fire Chief and Community Emergency Management Coordinator for information. Council passed a bylaw earlier this evening with regard to the order of the vote, so I'm going to start with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
The vote carries unanimously. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the Corporate Administration COVID-19 update through the Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Cribbs.
Mr. Cribbs, you have the floor.
Good evening, Council. I wanted to provide you a bit of good news that frankly validates the decision you made some weeks, roughly a month ago, to instruct staff to open the second ice pad, which is to say the Accipiter Arena at the MCC. What I can inform Council is that as at August 31st, the town of Pelham earned $25,000 more in revenue than it did the summer prior at that point. And for August, we had both arenas open, meaning that we think that's going to grow significantly. Since Accipiter opened on July 27th, as a result of your direction, I can tell you it's been used between 12 and 14 hours every single day. We're open 14 hours. So it's either 100% or close there too, 7 days a week. We're open 14 hours, 17 days a week. So we're tracking extremely well. It's been extremely well received. Next week, Ms. Van Ravensway and her team are meeting with representatives of most, if not all, hockey leagues that operate within Niagara to work out specifics of ice time. So we don't have those to announce yet. But I can tell you the summer program's gone extremely well, and it was very much the right decision to open up the Accipiter Arena. And that's what I have to report. Thank you.
And Mr. CEO, have you had a swim in Pelham's pool yet?
Well, the thing is, I jumped in and it spread so much water everywhere, something about my capacity to displace, that I was sort of asked not to do it again. So I'm one and done. That's been my sum total experience. I have been enjoying many of Niagara's beaches this summer, though. No one seems to get mad if you jump in Ontario or Erie. You don't displace enough to make anyone sort of politely ban you from the pool. And I felt so embarrassed for Vicky. It had to be such an awkward conversation from her part.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Mr. CAO. I'll turn to any questions on the report of the CAO from any council member. Not seeing any, we'll turn it to the clerk.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, on a motion by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved, the Council received the COVID-19 update presentation from D. Cribs, Chief Administrative Officer, for information, and I will start the vote with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart. Councillor Stewart?
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
we're backwards. Thank you. Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is a delegation with regard to the PCI roads inventory from Sheila Canal of ANA.
Okay, and
The deputy clerk is just uploading her presentation to the recording, and she will be ready to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor, senior management, and other delegates. I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but I'm here to present the pavement condition index, the road needs study that we conducted in 2019. We're applied research associates, and we were hired by Town of Pelham to complete their inventory road needs study. Next slide. Our project mandate was to complete pavement evaluation for about 243 kilometers of pavement, out of which 41% was asphalt concrete, so which something that you would see a hard surface, and then another 59% was chip seal. That comes out to be a total area of 1.5 million square meters. Next slide, please. We inspected pavement according to MTO surface condition manuals, and what came out was pavement condition index. So pavement condition index ranges from 0 to 100, so 0 being poor and 100 being very good. 0 to 50 is poor, 51 to 60 is in fair condition, and 61 to 75 is in good condition, 76 to 100 is in very good condition. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of all of the PCI indexes for each section. I have the full report in the report itself. This is just a snapshot. Next slide, please. And this is overview of what a PCI of 73, which is a good condition roadway, looks like. This is in Station Street. Next slide, Steve. Next slide, please. Kevin Drive, what a PCI of 55 looks like. Next slide, please. There, I had a slight error. I didn't realize that I had the same picture, but it's in the section figure 2.7 of the report that you can see. I'm sure you've got a report. That is a PCI of 49. That's how a poor pavement looks like. Next slide, please. And this is chip seal pavement, so it's also called low class bituminous, so LCB, Tice Road, PCI of 72, which is considered good. Next slide, please. PCI of 60. This is, again, when you look at it, you can see that chip seal looks a lot worse than a regular asphalt pavement for a similar PCI. It all has to do with the deduct values and all the distresses that are present in two different kinds of pavements. This is what a PCI of 60 looks like for LCB, and it's called a fair condition pavement. Next slide, please. And this is a PCI of 47, which is in poor condition, low class bituminous chip seal pavement, Balfour Street. Next slide, please. Overall, PCI rating distribution of Town of Pelham, it's good. Over 45% is in very good condition. Slightly there below that is in good condition. 12% of the pavement is in fair condition, and just over 2% is in poor condition. Next slide, please. Now, what this is primary distress deduct influence. So these are all the distresses on the side. These are not just there's way too many distresses than what's listed here, but what I've listed here is top 5 distresses for each type of pavement. So HCB would be high class bituminous, LCB would be low class bituminous, what you know as a chip seal. So for example, for HCB, out of all of the high class bituminous pavements in town of Pelham, if you look at all of the distresses, 21.8% of the distresses were distortion. So what it means is, if we were to focus, this is a snapshot of to help the managers to plan the program in future. You know, what is it that's causing such a havoc in our pavement? So if you go out and fix the distortion, it looks like 21.8% is distortion in the pavement. That means it will improve your pavement condition index, which in turn will improve the network value of the pavement. So similarly, there is HCB and then LCB. It's the highest one is alligator cracking. For LCB, 20%, that is clearly the structural problem, right? In HCB, rutting is also a structural problem. Next slide, please. For this project, we gathered all of the construction history that was provided to us by town. We looked at the state of the pavement from repair, from the first reconstruction to the PCI age. So basically looked at the age of the pavement and developed the models with that historical information. Not all the time, not all the pavement section had good construction history. And in that case, we used some formula to come up with the model. We created 4 models for rehabilitation and resurfacing. So rehabilitation, we did HCB and LCB. Resurfacing, we did HCB and LCB. And these are the models that we use to do our forecasting, budget forecasting, and pavement deterioration forecasting later in the report. Next slide, please. So this is one of the table that's included in the report. What this one says is present network value and priority index. So if you are interested and have time, there is a detailed description of what present network value means and what present pavement priority index means. So just to give you a quick example for pavement priority index, let's say there were four pavement sections, had exactly same PCI pavement condition index. You needed to make a decision on, repairing and maintaining that pavement, doing some kind of rehabilitation on one of those pavements, and you don't know which one to do. So pavement priority index, what it does is it doesn't just look at the pavement condition index from that year. It looks at the historical rehabilitation and resurfacing programs, and it calculates all of the other things right from the beginning to come up with a pavement priority index. So for example, if a pavement was mill and overlay, so then the pavement priority index of mill and overlay would be smaller than pavement priority index of reconstruction. So this is just a snapshot. Pavement network value is something that, so what's the value? Pavement has to serve as a purpose of a riding condition. So we don't get too many complaints by the resident and everybody else. And then there is a structural condition. It needs to be able to take that traffic, right? So pavement network value looks at both the comfort and the structural function. And then we come up with a number, and these are all the PCI, PNV, and PPI listed in the report. Next slide, please. On top of the pavement condition index, when we were out there, We also looked at the associated features of the pavement. So for example, ditches, shoulders, surface drainage. So this is by no means a full-fledged a survey like we did for roadway, but these are the associated features and something that we can see and something that needs to be paid attention to in future. Like this, we just want to make this is just an added value because my technicians are out there already. It takes him another 30 seconds to do this. So as an added value, we have provided this as well. For example, for this Alder Crescent, we're saying that the shoulders in Alder Crescent is in very poor condition. Surface drainage and ditches are in fair condition. Next slide, please. Budget forecast. So for the report itself, I did four budget scenarios. So first budget was unrestricted budget. So basically, we do a major rehabilitation once PCI goes below 45, and then 60 would be resurfacing. But if we had enough money, we wanted to do everything we can to make the best out of the pavement, then that's unrestricted budget scenario. That doesn't really help a lot, but that gives a snapshot of what is that kind of budget and where does our PCI go when we have that kind of budget. We did a scenario with the current budget, which was 2019 budget, $450,000 a year. And then overall network PCI of Pelham was 69 in 2019. So we looked at how much money would we need to maintain the PCI of 69, which is what we have currently for the next 10 years. And another budget scenario we did was PCI of 72, which is what neighboring regions and towns and cities have been doing. It's a standard PCI that, not everybody's standard, but most of the Niagara region around there is looking at this standard PCI. So what does it take for Pelham's pavement to go up to 72? So that's another budget scenario we did. For this council meeting purposes, I did 3 additional forecast scenario, which was, what right now our budget is $450,000. What is $1 million a year do? What does $1.5 million do? And what does $2 million do? So next slide, please. Let's go and have a look at that. It's budget forecast. This is a $450,000 a year. If we were to spend $450,000 a year only by the end of 2029, our PCI would be at 33. So network PCI would be 33, which is in a poor condition. 0 to 40 is poor condition. And for that, we have the amount here. There's a major rehab and then yearly total and all that stuff. So next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of the forecast in figure. Again, you can see there is a huge portion of resurfacing and small rehabilitation. When you have small amount of budget available, what this does is it tries to keep the good condition in good and try to optimize that funding to make the most out of it. So that's why you're seeing huge resurfacing, which costs less money than doing a major rehabilitation. Next slide, please. This is a maintain current PCI model. So for me to maintain that 69 PCI, how much money would I need? That is $10 million for 10 years in rehabilitation and $21 million in the resurfacing rehabilitation. So total yearly budget that we would need to maintain 69 is about $3.2 million in average. Next slide, please. That is the same figure showing the table. Next slide, please. So PMS system uses PCI, pavement surface distresses, and prioritizes based on previous performances to determine a suggested program for 2020. Our next program that we did was short-term forecasting, which was for 2020. So what what are the maintenance and rehabilitation you need to do in 2020. So that's called short-term forecast. That one really looks at, what are the urgent needs of the pavement. And this is generally comes under the maintenance budget and not the resurfacing budget. When I talked to Jason told me that there is a dedicated maintenance budget in town of Pelham, which I was really happy about. So staff uses this list and then looks at which ones they can do and prioritize based on the available budget. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of all of the budget scenarios I did. Black line up there is our current PCI, so 69. Green thick line is showing what happens to PCI year by year with our current budget. So every increment in funding, which is about $500,000 increment, gives you about so that's 33 and that's about 40. So it's about 10 points in PCI. So every 500,000 increment is giving you extra 10 points in PCI at the end of, you're gaining extra 10 points at the end of 2029. Next slide, please. And this is just a number that's showing in the graph for your reference. Next slide, please. Short-term maintenance needs. This is what I was talking about. What is the needs for current year? So major things that we've looked at was deep patching, shallow patching, and crack sealing. I know some of the neighboring cities, they don't do crack sealing, but we have recommended that, you need to go out there and seal your cracks because water is there are three enemies of pavement. That's water, and then second is water, and third is water. So we want to make sure that we're not letting any of the water go down the pavement, so that crack sealing is a very, very, very important thing to do. If you see one crack coming out in a pavement, you keep an eye on it, take pictures of it every month, every 2 months, and then you'll start seeing crack propagate so fast and pavement deteriorates really, really fast. So it's really good to have a good crack sealing program, and then deep patching and shallow patching are taking care of those other needs that are alligator cracking, which is higher severity, more structural related issues. Not all the time we have money to fix all of the structural related issues. So in that case, we do deep patching and shallow patching and try to preserve that pavement for as long as possible. Based on our needs, $70,000 is allocated for deep patching, shallow patching $28,000, and crack sealing only $2,700. Next slide, please. So in summary, overall condition is in good condition with an average of PCI 69. Currently $450,000 annual budget seems to be insufficient to maintain the current network average PCI. If this is the budget that goes through for the next 10 years, then the PCI will reduce down to 33 in 2029. And when that happens, it is a lot harder to bring the pavement back to where we are right now. The more we let go, the more harder it gets. An annual budget of $3.2 million would be needed to provide a stable network condition, which is what we have right now. I believe that's my last slide. Oh, no, I have pavement preservation. So pavement preservation is something that a lot of city and towns has been really interested in, and it's something they've taken on. It's really, what can I do to do my pavement to preserve my state? Because I don't have a lot of money to spend to fix when it gets really, really bad. So what do I do? So these are the funding that should be standalone funding. It's a separate study that needs to be done so that you have an idea on what you can do to your level. And maintaining construction history data is so important. I was working for another town recently, and someone told them that construction history data is not important, and that is so untrue. No matter what asset you're trying to maintain, the origination of that asset is very, very important to see how it's behaving. So I recommend the engineering department to maintain their construction history data in future. Thank you.
Excuse me. So thank you for that very detailed report. An eye-opener for sure. Before I put questions over to council, perhaps I would like to ask a question. I see the shoulders. They got a very poor rating, and I just mentioned this to the CAO and our Director of Public Works the other day. And of course, in your presentation, you also noted that the three worst deterrents for roads pavement is water, water, and water. And when you say whether the shoulders are very poor, is that indicative of the shoulders not letting the water get off the roads? Is that what would give them a poor rating? Because not only in Pelham, it's something that once you get into town spending, you take a look every time you go someplace. But I've noticed that, and I don't know why it happens, the road either goes down or the shoulders come up. But that's why we end up with that 2-foot strip along the side of the road, is because the darn water can't flow into the ditch because all of a sudden the shoulder has that 2-inch ridge there. So so the first question, when you say our shoulders are in very poor shape, is that what you're commenting on? Is the fact that they're not accepting the water from the road, or what would give them that rating?
First of all, Mr. Mayor, the shoulder that I showed was for this one particular pavement. So I'm not saying that all of the shoulder in your town of Pelham is in poor condition. This was in the slide, it was showing one section, and that section shoulder was in poor condition. So we would have to look at, it's in a report, so where you can see, how many shoulders, how much of the sections are in poor condition. But yes, I've seen this, and I was actually visiting town of Pelham 2-3 weeks ago, and they were a little bit out of town limit, but it's still within town. They were talking to me about, I was telling them about the meeting and whatnot. So the problem with the design of the roadway is, the drainage is actually in a high area, so the water can't drain, and then you have this pool of water in front of people's driveway, and even in the roadway, shoulder is in a higher state, and then grading, right? So there is a lot to do with the grades of the pavement and how well the water can flow, and then the drainage too. A lot of the times we've seen that the drainage and the ditches are actually covered. So it is very fruitful to have someone that works for town in the operations department to go out and have a look at their drainage situation and make sure that drainage is flowing properly. There aren't a lot of debris in the drainage that's not letting the water flow. So we need to make a clear path for water. But if the pavement is built with the wrong grading and it's not draining the water properly, then you can only fix that in another resurfacing and rehabilitation cycle. But when you're seeing shoulders in a very poor condition, there are two things. Either it's water, or shoulders are never built the same way as the pavement thickness is built. So, there isn't enough asphalt in the shoulder as much as in the pavement. So a lot of the traffic is using shoulder, which they shouldn't be using. Shoulder is for emergency purposes only. If someone's driving in the shoulder, then that's not good enough. So there are various factors come into play here.
Okay, and you're commenting on paved shoulders. I guess I'm thinking about in the very rural part of the town where the shoulder is actually just a gravel base and what have you. But I appreciate that part of the study. Thank you. I'll open that up to any questions, comments from councillor members then. And I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter. Do you have a reference list of municipalities your company has done this work for? The second question I've got is, how long has your firm been doing this type of analysis? And can you tell me what the accuracy of your analysis is?
ARA has been doing this for Niagara region of Niagara since 2004. We've been doing it. Last year was the only year that we didn't do it for Niagara Region because Niagara Region is going through some improvements and budget issues and whatnot. So nobody did anything for Niagara Region. For others, we've done it for City of Welland, Grimsby, West Lincoln, work for Fort Erie right now doing similar analysis. So I have a lot of experience. Well, us together in ARA have a lot of experience doing this sort of analysis. And this is, it's not going to be as accurate as, it's not going to be, I said PCI would be 33 by the end of 29. It probably won't be 33 like exactly. Maybe it will be in 35, or it could go down to 30, right? It all depends on how much money you're spending and what kind of traffic grows, because there's traffic comes into play a lot in pavement. So, suddenly you have a high traffic in one of the, your subdivision grows and lots of traffic come in, lots of dump truck come in, then there is a high potential of pavement damage. So there is a lot of factors that come into play, but we have considered as much as possible for the deterioration, and these are as accurate as we can predict at this point.
Any other questions, Councillor Hildebrand?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillor questions or comments? Councillor Wink.
So just a comment, and thank you for your report. It's a real eye-opener on the condition, but what gets me is how much is going to be required to maintain even satisfactory ratings and whatever. I'm going to be curious to see how Public Works and Finance comes to council with recommendations on how we're going to tackle this going forward. If we do an additional $2 million a year for road surfacing, we're looking at a 14.8% tax increase, which I'm not sure, I don't think the residents of the community would be too pleased with something like that. So curious to see how we're going to fund this going forward, and look forward to the recommendations from staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, questions? Not seen any. I again thank the presenter for your report, and I will turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. On a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart, be it resolved that Council receive the delegation by Sheila Canal from ARA regarding PCI roads inventory for information. For the vote, beginning with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
This is carried unanimously. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the consideration and approval of the minutes of the July 27th council meeting. I do have a motion by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. C-12-2020, regular council minutes of July 27th. If you'd like to call for errors and omissions.
Yep. After reading the minutes, any councillor have to report any errors or omission on these minutes? Not seen any. We'll turn to the clerk.
For the vote, starting with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Carried unanimously. Mr. Mayor, we don't have any items of business arising from council minutes that have been added to the agenda. The next item, 7, request to lift consent agenda items for separate consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, on the consent agenda items, is there any item that any councillor would like to lift for further debate and action? Not seeing any, I'll turn to the clerk.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, on a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Kaur, be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the August 10th, 2020 Council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. Did you wish me to review them as we did at the last meeting?
Yes, perhaps we should go through them.
So the first item is an information correspondence item with regard to the Niagara Regional Face Covering Bylaw to be received for information. Then there is the signing of the AMO, Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centres Declaration of Mutual Commitment and Friendship with the Niagara Region and the Friendship Centre support. And we do have 2 sets of Cannabis Control Committee minutes from July the 8th and July 24th, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess we're ready for the vote.
Seeing no discussion, I will call the vote, starting with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
This carries unanimously. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda, we are now at 10.2, staff reports requiring action. We have the mandatory face covering bylaw report, and I do have a motion by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2020-0122 and recommend to Council that the Town of Pelham mandatory mask bylaw for 2020 be approved. Now, of course, there will be a separate vote for the bylaw itself, and I do have Councillor Stewart having declared a pecuniary interest on this item. So if you'd like to call for discussion.
Yes, and the standard procedure in a Zoom meeting that the councillor just, can she still stay in the meeting but just not participate in the discussion, or what's the step on that?
Through you, yes, she can still stay in the meeting. She doesn't have to log out and log back in. I see that she has muted her microphone and has removed herself. That's just a photograph of her, so
Okay.
You're ready to proceed with discussion.
Excellent. Okay, discussion on the mandatory face covering bylaw from Councillor Hahn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this question then would be to the chief. Just wondering with regards to this, who would be subject to the actual fine then? Like, can you give me an example of who would get that $250 fine if they did not have a face covering on?
It would be the person that does not have a mask or a face covering that's required in that space.
So how then does it apply to somebody with a rationale for a medical reason?
The medical, anybody that has a reason not to wear a mask is exempt. So if they don't have to have any proof of, they don't have to have a medical doctor's slip or anything. If someone just says, I'm not able to wear a mask, then that's where it's going to lie.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Not seeing any. I guess I'll just make the comment that I'll be voting against this. I voted for masks at the region. There's only 3 municipalities, 2 that put up a bylaw before the region. We are the only municipality after the region has instituted their bylaw that has seen fit to bring one forward. The rest of the municipalities are piggybacking on the region. And myself, I think that my own personal feelings is that that's more than adequate for the residents of Pelham. So I won't be voting in favor of this. Thank you. I will now ask the mayor or the clerk to call the vote.
So members of council, just to remind you, this is to receive the report only. This is not the vote on the actual bylaw. That will come later in the meeting. So I will start with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously to receive the report. And I see that we have Councillor Stewart back in the meeting. The next item on the agenda is 10.2.2. I have a motion by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2020-0115 for information, and that Council consider continuation of the Gypsy Moth Management Program in 2021. And the report is entitled 2020 Gypsy Moth Aerial Spray Program Efficacy Report from Public Works.
And discussion on this motion from members of council. Well, I'll start it off then. Jason, Director of Public Works, have you counted the egg mass yet, or that's later on in the fall we do that, is it not?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We will be bringing forward, as part of the 2021 budget, an allowance to undertake another egg infestation survey, egg mass survey, which will be completed. Usually that's completed once the foliage drops, and we're expecting to include that as part of the 2021 capital budget ask, operating budget ask, sorry. And then that will be completed in January and February of next year in advance of a potential 2021 spray program.
Okay, thank you for that. So the program itself we did this year on the acreage we sprayed would be deemed a success by going by the report of biomass. Would you concur with that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is correct. The areas that were sprayed and included as part of the 2020 spray program, we had a very successful spray. And the defoliation that was identified in those spray zones was very minimal, and we're very happy with the outcome of the actual spray program.
So one further question, if I may. So if we count, if council passes this and we do the egg count again this fall, is there a chance that I guess I think, yeah. So the question is there a chance then that if we go strictly by the egg numbers or the egg masses, we could drop some area out and then move over and do another area? Would that be a correct assumption?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I'm able to, I did ask Allison Craig from Bioforest to be in on the call tonight.
Okay.
She has graciously joined the call, and he's able to speak to that particular item. If council wishes, then I'd be obliged to hand it over to her.
Yes, I'd be anxious to hear her comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so if we see the results in the egg mass surveys this coming winter, what we expect to see would be a dramatic reduction in egg mass numbers throughout those areas that were sprayed in the spring of 2020. And those areas would not, in all likelihood, will not require a spray next year. But judging by the numbers that we saw in the egg mass survey in 2019, if we see those high counts again, those would be areas that would be primary candidates for a spray next spring.
Yes. So am I to, so did I hear you right that you think that the areas we sprayed this year could very easily have dramatically lower numbers of eggs within them and not require a spray program in that area so that we could move to other areas of the town?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if we lost Allison. What I can say is that the areas, several of the areas that were included in this year's spray program have been sprayed previously. Those are some of our more sensitive areas. We do have, based on the 2020 spray program, we've received a lot of comments regarding the effectiveness of the spray in those areas. So there is a possibility that there will be some of those areas once we do the egg mass surveys in 2021. There's a possibility that some of those areas may not need to be treated next year. In accordance with our policy, we will look at the whole town and determine, prioritize on what areas should be included as part of 2021 spray program. But again, it's going to depend on the results of the egg mass surveys that are completed in January and February of next year to determine where we concentrate our efforts in spray.
Excellent. And if I may, just one more. You're talking with the biomass people and your own observations. Do you think that this year was a peak year, or because it does go in cycles? It sure would be nice to have some good news and say, yes, this was a peak year, and next year is going to be drastically lower. But what's your take on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is, I'd like to defer this to Allison. I see that she has once again joined the call, so maybe she is a better person for that question.
Thank you. Allison?
Thank you. Yes, so we have seen reports and through the news all across the province. It seems that 2020 has been a particularly awful year for gypsy moth all the way across southern Ontario and even reaching into central Ontario. It seems that populations were at peak levels. And again, I think, we brought up this point at the council meeting when I last presented the report in, I think it was March or February. Weather will have a big determining factor on what the populations look like next year. So if we have a warm, dry spring, that will not be favorable to pathogens that cause the collapse of the population. If we have a cool, wet spring, that will be favorable to a variety of natural controls, funguses that have a pretty drastic effect on populations in more naturalized areas. These population cycles are not as predictable in urbanized areas. They're more applicable to tracking populations in the natural forest. But yes, it's definite that this year was a peak year across the province, and the weather will be what determines what we see next year. Typically, populations peak for around between 1 to 3 years. It's very rare that outbreaks last more than 3 years in one particular location. But again, that's dependent on weather and the host availability. So the trees that the gypsy moth likes to eat, are they abundant or are they not? All of these kind of environmental factors will influence how long an outbreak can last in one particular area.
Great. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. We'll ask one last time. Any other councillor have any questions or comments? And I see Councillor Wink.
So looking at your recommendation, you're looking at 2021 to increase operating budget to $170,000. I'm just going to say that I when I approved this initially, it was $150,000 a year, and that was going to be a fixed amount. And if we didn't spend any more, that was going to go in a reserve. I hate like heck to start seeing creep in an increase in this line item. We have to start being a lot more responsible to our residents, so we're not going to affect taxes as greatly. So I'm going to be taking a hard position of the 150 going forward for the next operating budget.
Thank you, Councillor. I see the director has a comment. Jason?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So just as a point of clarification, this year's $150,000 was used to complete the spray program, administer the program, and do the communication and media for the program. So we had previously, under a 2019 budget, operating budget, conducted the EGMAS surveys. So the difference between the 150,000 and the 170,000 is to budget for the EGMAS surveys that would be completed in January and February, in addition to the same spray program, same type of area that we just did this year.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what I'm saying is that this spray program and the survey should all be inclusive in that $150,000, not in addition to. We've got other municipalities that have been wrestling with funding for gypsy moths. Burlington Town Council turned it down, not a cent. Caledonia, not a cent. Not to say that we have to be like other councils, but I don't want to see extra money creeping into this line item.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Councillor. Your concern noted, obviously, and I suppose that would be a discussion for budget then. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
All items would be subject to council debate at budget review time, yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so if we accept this for information, it's not tying council to the 170 then?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, there is no specific amount noted in the resolution. It just says that council consider the continuation of the gypsy moth management program in 2021, and that the word considers is the key word in that resolution.
Okay, yep. Thank you for that then, for that clarification. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. We will turn to the clerk.
So the vote on this item will start with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Carried unanimously. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is 10.2.3, Town of Pelham Pavement Condition Index PCI Study. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2020-0119 for information purposes, and that's on a motion by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Kaur.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions or comments on this report brought forward by Public Works? Not seeing any. Then I'll ask the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the vote will begin with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
Carried unanimously. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the Niagara Region Transit On-Demand Services Memorandum of Understanding, item 10.2.4. And a motion by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive report 2020-0114 Recreation, and that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute the Memorandum of Understanding between the Region of Niagara and the Town of Pelham to operate a new on-demand transit service. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions and comment.
Do we have our guests coming in from Matt?
So they were invited. I do know that they were present at a neighboring municipalities council meeting. I don't see that they have. Mr. Mayor, they're still at the previous engagement.
Okay.
At the other council meeting, and they will join as soon as they possibly can.
Okay. Well, hopefully any question council has on this, our Director of Recreation can get that. So I'll open it to questions from council on this. Any questions? And I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Recreation. One of the terms in the Pelham Agreement is the fact that the Niagara Region, in item 2.4 terms, item C, Niagara Region shall have the right in its sole discretion to terminate the agreement on 90 days written notice. I think it should be reciprocal. I think we should also have the similar terms as they have in the agreement. So I will not accept those types of terms. Thank you.
Any comment on that, Ms. Director?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, what has had to happen is the region had to enter into an agreement in which when the region came to council meeting of December the 2nd, they basically asked for council's approval to enter into a 1-year pilot on-demand transit system so that they could go back and enter into their agreements so that they had Pelham, Grimsby, Lincoln all supporting the agreement. And that is what we agreed to basically at that time. Now this is a 1-year pilot, and as the agreement does state that after the term that we will, have we're able to negotiate the second term of the agreement.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that doesn't answer the question why the region has a one-way agreement.
Ms. Director?
Well, this is the agreement that the, through you, Mr. Mayor, that the region is proposing. That was the understanding back in December. And perhaps the treasurer, Teresa, I can see that your hand was up.
Okay.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think the reason why it's written this way is that the region does have an agreement with the service provider, and I think that they need to have all 4 of the municipalities on board with the agreement with the service provider. So just in case something's not going well with the service provider, that's what that 90 days notification is for that. So we're all on board with this in order to make this pilot work. It's a 1-year pilot. So after a year, then we can decide whether we want to stay or not. With regards to the impact of the budget for the town of Pelham, there is no impact. The amount that we are paying for this service is the amount that we have in our budget. So I think this is the reason why that statement is there, and the other municipalities don't have that option out.
Thank you for that, Ms. Treasurer. A question I was going to ask Matt, Ms. Director, was are the vans that they're getting, do you know where they're going to station them? Are they going to, quite a distance between Lincoln, Grimsby, and Pelham. Do we have any idea where they're going to have a constant starting point, or do you have any inkling on that? And I'm sorry I didn't ask you this, give you a heads up on this question.
Fine. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, actually, through discussions with the region, I did request that our vans be located basically here for our municipality so that the travel time is less. Right at the moment, I believe that they will be bringing the vans to this location and then distributing them, over the month with the other municipalities.
Great, thank you for that. Any other questions? And so I guess if we can, and I think we should all know this, but the figure seems to have slipped out of my head. What is this? Is this costing us the gas tax, and then in what other amount? Or is it just the gas tax? Or could you explain that again?
So through you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay, thank you.
What this is the net amount of the town's portion right now in our budget that the tax levy is paying for the transit system. So it is net of the gas tax. That's correct.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks. Okay, any other questions before we call the vote? Not seeing any, I will turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So for the resolution as presented again by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Wink. We'll start with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the presentation and consideration of bylaws. Given that we do have a disclosure of pecuniary interest on the third bylaw being presented, I would suggest that the motion be divided and that one be voted on separately.
Okay, yep.
So on a motion by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Hahn, be it resolved that Council for the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the Mayor and Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. The first bylaw, 4267, being a bylaw to establish and name a highway in the Town of Pelham known as Hope Lane. And bylaw 4268 of 2020, being a bylaw to name a private road in the Town of Pelham known as Summerside's Mews.
Okay. Any discussion, comments on these bylaws? Not seeing any.
And we're back to Councillor Hahn.
Oh.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. And now of Councillor Stewart, yep, she has muted her microphone and I see that she has vacated the meeting. So this is with regard to bylaw 4270, being a bylaw to require the wearing of face coverings in enclosed public places during the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll start with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
No.
And the motion carries.
Okay.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, that concludes the open portion of the council meeting for August the 10th. The next item is the resolution to go into closed session. And I see Councillor Stewart has returned to the meeting. So the motion is made by Councillor Stewart and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following. Pursuant to the Municipal Act, Section 239(2). Litigation and potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, and 239.2F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, 1 item. 239.2D, labor relations or employee negotiations, 1 item. 239.2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, 1 item. And the 4th item, 239.2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and labor relations or employee negotiations, 1 item. So I'll start this vote with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. If you'll just give staff a few moments to stop the live stream and the recording, and we will reconvene in just a few moments.